just to move to, I put a couple of other handouts up on Blackboard. Let me talk about this one first, the downdraft. This was an activity in the WVU book that might help you. Just now figured out how to adjust the camera. That's great. But it might help you brainstorm and think through some ideas. So if you're at home and you're stuck, you don't know what it is that you might want to write about, these are some prompts that might hopefully spark an idea for you. So the 3 moments one, choose at least 3 distinctively separate time periods in your life. Begin each section with "I am blank years old," and free write from there for 10 minutes. So you can spend about a half hour just telling your life story, what happened when you were 5 or 10 or 15 or what have you. Kind of like that song that came out a few years ago. I'm this years old, here's what I'm doing. I forget the name of that song, but I digress. So yeah, that might help you get started. It might help you spark an idea. 3 readers. Focus on one event who might be interested in the event, who might learn something from your story, who might give you a new insight. So this is kind of an audience-oriented question, writing your story about your life for several different audiences in mind. Number 3, I like number 3 a lot, the flash draft. Choose one important life event that has had an impact on your present view of life in general. It says it might be something you were able to give or teach someone else, some moment when you failed but moved on, the loss of someone you're special to you, a lesson you learned, or a skill you mastered, an unexpected gift you received, a goal you achieved, whatever interesting, unique story it is you want to tell. Think about a moment in your life. Spend some time writing, sketching some ideas down. That can help you spark an idea for your story early. And then it says, then you can probably disregard this page. This is if we were doing this in a kind of peer review. So like I said, I'm not requiring you to do this on the discussion board, but as far as helping you get started after watching this video, the sheet will help you do that. Most of the time, students find that sheet pretty helpful. One last thing I want to mention, there's 4 next Tuesday. You're going to read several examples. You're going to read John Steinbeck's short essay on fishing, Edward Abbey's essay about being a park ranger, The Serpents of Paradise. You're going to read 3 student examples. And so something that to be a good writer, you have to also be a good reader. You have to ask yourself questions about things you read, analyze things you read, think about them more carefully than you might otherwise would. One thing that we like to do in an English class is to forever ruin enjoying anything else you ever read or watch in your life, without overanalyzing it. That's a habit of ours. But thinking about a text critically, rather than just consuming a text. So whenever you read a story, it's always good to just take in the story and enjoy it. Also think about it critically. Don't just consume it like you're Netflix binging a show. That's something that you always have to say. So as you're reading, this sheet gives you some ideas. So maybe you notice some interesting descriptions that are happening in your text. Highlight those. Maybe use a pen, mark on the text a little bit. So if you print out those PDFs, mark down maybe parts that interested you. Maybe highlight and write down an idea that you noticed happening. If if you sort of dissect texts in that way, it sort of helps you see how the parts of the text all add up together to create a whole. And whenever you're creating your own story, it'll help you realize, hey, well, maybe I need this part here, and to make it the whole, the story itself. Being critical, asking yourself questions like, well, if I took, let's say that John Steinbeck took this paragraph of "I'm fishing" out, how would the story be different? Those are good questions to ask, because it'll also help you write your own stories. And then it gives you a few questions you can think about as you ponder, as you read the examples. And then even, these are good questions to think about even as you do your own work. I said, look at the title, what you expect before you read. And so usually titles are forecasts, are good forecasts of what you're getting ready to read and experience. Don't just put title or paper one as your title. Maybe try to make your title relate to your story a bit. But of course, it's okay to write your title last. You want to write your story first. But titles are important. And so whenever you're looking at the examples, ask yourself, well, what's the significance of the title? That'll probably be something that I ask you on the discussion board for next week. So brace yourself for that. How does a writer use detail, imagery, metaphor, structure, voice, style, point of view, etc., etc.? And so all those literary techniques, similes, metaphors. Metaphors, you're comparing something to something else. Similes, the same thing, except you use something is like something. Point of view, is it written in a first person, I, or a third person, we, second person, you, that addresses the reader? Is it written in the past or the present tense, or maybe just the future tense, or maybe does the writer change that at points? What's the significance of dialogue? Maybe Edward Abbey spends entire paragraphs where he describes what's happening in nature. What's the significance of that? Just ask these questions. Try to take it in as you read, rather than just consuming it. There's a paragraph in one of these examples that strikes out to you, make a note of it. What's the author trying to achieve with this paragraph? Because those are the kinds of questions I want to ask you whenever I read your example. Then if you notice something that the writer does as far as maybe a turn or a transition or something like that, make note of it. That might be something you borrow as inspiration for your own sort of writing toolbox. And so those are just some pages in the textbook. I think it's all good advice as far as getting started. Like I said, reading texts first, seeing some examples. That in addition to doing a little pre-writing, hopefully help you spark an idea for your own story. But for next Tuesday, I am going to ask several discussion board questions. I'm going to put those up. Maybe I'm recording this video on Wednesday, the 29th. I'll probably put those up tomorrow, the 30th. That way you will have access to them all weekend. That's your first discussion board post. Like I said, use those examples to think about what it is that you will want to do. Those are all, some of those examples have more problems than others. They're all pretty good pieces of writing. But other than maybe the two, Steinbeck and Abbey, the student examples aren't perfect. They all sometimes have their problems, whether it's typos or misspellings, or maybe they could have done something more. I'm going to ask you that. Could the writer have done anything more, in your opinion? They're student examples, even though they're pretty good ones. But they could still use some improvement. I'm going to ask you to even be the teacher and ask, how can we improve those? So that's your post for next Tuesday. I think next Thursday I'm going to have one-on-one meetings like I talked about in the syllabus video. I know you guys are online. It's impossible to meet with me in person where I'm on the Wyoming County campus unless you live close to Wyoming County, which it's perfectly fine. But I will be available via Skype or FaceTime. I'll send a sign-in sheet. That way I'll be aware to expect a call. So a week from tomorrow, a week from now almost, for the Friday check-in. And that's when I will offer times that you can sign up to talk to me one-on-one if you so choose. And I have an office phone too, so if you want to talk to me on the phone, maybe you want to send me a draft of your paper by email, we can talk about it on the phone. We can do that. Whatever works for you, I'm at your disposal. And so, like I said, over the next week, work on your draft. I don't think the paper will be due until, the paper's not due until 2 weeks from now, according to the syllabus. Two Fridays from now when the paper's due. I think it's September the 14th. But in the meantime, over the next week at least, do some pre-writing, sketch out, maybe start sketching out a draft, whatever it is your story is. And then for that one-on-one meeting or conferencing or phone call or whatever, I can then help you talk through it, maybe help you finish your draft. I can give you some ideas as you're writing and composing. So that's it. That's for paper 1 video. I hope this is clear. I hope I've given you enough materials where you can get started. And if you have any questions, you can of course email me, give me a call at the office, whatever the case might be. And so basically my best advice is just start writing. If you start writing, you can then polish up, you can organize. Just simply sit down and start writing. And that's the best way to get started. It's always the worst thing for a writer, sitting down typing those first words in a Microsoft Word document. But if you just sit down and do it, don't think too hard about it, just simply let the words come. Don't worry about making grammar mistakes or anything your first pass. That helps you get ideas down. Then you can go back and clean up and organize. And so that's it. Until next time, you guys let me know if you have any questions.